Good morning, everyone. I am John Lyons, Deputy Secretary of the Energy and Environment Cabinet, and welcome back to day 2 of the 45th Annual Governor's Conference on Energy and Environment. Yesterday, we heard about our new energy strategy, ways we support our natural lands through EEC programs, and emerging industries in Kentucky. Today, we'll be exploring building an improved and more resilient communities through collaborative processes and funding that is available through federal programs. We also hear from Cabinet leadership on some of the hot topics and issues facing the Commonwealth. We'll also be talking about the new tools and technologies for improving how we do our work and interpret data. Finally, we'll cap off the conference by learning ways to better engage all citizens, be inclusive in our programs, and help provide resources to the people who need them most. Our first session today is building better communities. As we know, communities face many issues on a daily basis, whether they're trying to bounce back from storms, looking to improve infrastructure, or working to better engage citizens to plan for an enhanced economic and social future. There are many opportunities to craft and act on a new vision for tomorrow. Our speakers today will talk about processes, resources, and funding that can help make that happen. With potential infrastructure funding on the horizon, we hope that this session will offer new ideas to improve engagement with our citizens and layer funding for more environmentally, socially, and economic resilient communities. Today, we'll be hearing from Shane Barton, Downtown Revitalization Coordinator with Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky, and Allison Smith, Assistant Director of the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability at Louisville Metro. They will talk about processes and strategies they have used in both urban and rural settings to successfully guide projects and redevelopment. We will then hear from Sabrina Sims about funding available through the Federal Emergency Management Administration for resiliency projects focusing on hazard mitigation, and Nika Barnard will be assisting with questions. Finally, Kimberly, McCay, and Scott Maas of the USDA will be joining us to talk about the variety of funding and services they have available for both the for-profit and nonprofit sectors for energy resiliency and infrastructure. Just a reminder that we'll take questions at the end of all presentations, time permitting. Please use the question queue provided, and we will take questions in the order received. With that, we now turn to Mr. Barton to begin the session. Shane, the floor is yours.
Right, let me change my screen here. Let's see. All right. I just want to make sure. Can someone give me, I just want to make sure my screen has not changed from the original slide.
It looks great, Shane. We can see your PowerPoint perfectly.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for being with us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing to build back better in our downtown ecosystems. So my name is Shane Barton. I'm the Downtown Revitalization Coordinator for the Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky at the University of Kentucky within the College of Agriculture. But just to give you a sense of CEDIC and the overview of our organization, we really do focus on creating vibrant economies through engagement. And we believe that connecting communities, people, places, and purpose can really drive results. Like I said, we're at the University of Kentucky, housed within the College of Agriculture, but we really focus on 5 key areas as we approach this work. And typically, those areas involve components of economic development, healthy communities or health outcomes, community design and planning, leadership and engagement, and then the arts as well. But what I really want to talk about today is our downtown ecosystem approach and some of the downtown revitalization work that we've done. While this may not necessarily fit within sort of the purview of natural lands per se, but I think it really does exemplify the intersection of resiliency and economies in communities and then the built environment. And as we approach downtown revitalization, the thing that I often remind people is there's a certain level of complexity that we have to be okay with. That all of these efforts, whether we're talking about working with people, working in places, working across regions, are always really complicated. We're looking at diverse investments and dreaming big. I apologize, my dog just went crazy. Let me Lord have mercy. So really what we're talking about here is partnerships. And on this right-hand side, you can see that core team of folks that often work together. So we often include municipal governments, mayors, elected officials, chambers of commerce, tourism, nonprofits, really everyone that we can get to the table. But I want to pull out a couple little pieces from these pictures here. The picture down in the bottom left are a number of people pushing carts. What they're doing, let me pause this one. I am so sorry. He is uncontrollable this morning. He's got me all shook up. But where this project works, or really where it comes from, is in 2014, the federal government created the Promise Zone, which is a group of counties down in southeastern Kentucky. There's 8 counties. These are counties that were severely impacted by a transitioning coal economy. And really this work, you're gonna have to excuse me, I am so sorry. I apologize. I am so sorry here. I want to give you a sense of what this program entails here. We package a number of technical services, programs that the Community Economic Development Initiative offer. One of them is the First Impressions program. That program really is like a secret shopper that we provide. Give me 1 second. This is driving me crazy. I am so sorry. But we focus on a First Impressions program. Really what that does is we provide those volunteers who come to your community. They give us their impression of what it's like to do business there or what it's like to visit. They do a whole web audit, and we're able to provide some wonderful feedback. We also do a business retention and expansion program that is really about relationship buildings with local business communities. And then we provide that extra level of design assistance that I'm going to showcase in just a moment. So why downtown? You know, I get that question a lot. Why downtown when we have so many other issues at play, whether we're talking about working with opiate recovery or whether we're working with mine impacted lands. There are so many big picture items. Why would we want to focus on downtown? The reason that we like to focus and what I like to convey is that the resiliency of our communities is often represented in the entanglement of the built assets, the ingrained memories, and the diversity of uses that we find in our downtowns. Downtown buildings are built to last, and they have had numbers and numbers of uses over time. These historic buildings are remarkable. But what I always emphasize is there is an intrinsic value that we cannot replicate in our downtowns. You cannot build a downtown now, given our zoning and given our parking requirements in many places. So that historical density really provides an avenue to do some amazing things. We also remind people that downtowns are for everyone. They aren't gated communities. These are communities that are for everyone. And with those diverse investments, we can create some really great outcomes, whether we're talking about creating jobs, improving property values, quality of life. But just to give you a sense of what a downtown represents, this image on the far right really is an overlay of sidewalks, streets, buildings, and the natural landscape of Manchester, Kentucky. So that's the sort of work we do. But one thing that I will emphasize here is that there's no singular way to measure success over time. Whether we're talking about economic resiliency, whether we're talking about organizational capacity, whether we're talking about simple demographics and numbers around our residents. There are a number of ways to measure downtown success, and I would share this with you, and just to ask you to think broadly. as we think about what success looks like, that it is more than just dollars and cents, that it's also the equity and the opportunities that we're able to create for people, individuals, and communities at large. But one thing I do share, and I will emphasize this every time you hear me talk, is that when we think about downtowns, and in particular today as we're thinking about the environment in broad terms, I will suggest that downtowns have an indicator species. Just like a small stream may have an indicator species of a mayfly and clean water, I will suggest that downtowns have an indicator species, and that is humans. The more feet in the street that you see navigating a downtown environment, most likely the healthier that place is. So one of the things that we are often working towards are, what does it look like and what do we need to do to get feet in the street exploring that ecosystem or environment? Now, some of the communities that we worked with in that Promise Zone project did a lot around walkability, around wayfinding, really creating that environment where people are comfortable and people can navigate that environment without a car. We know that sort of thing also benefits local businesses, because as people are walking, they're more likely to stop in and purchase something or get some food or coffee, or just by the fact that they are upright and walking and navigating that space is public health positive. But let's talk about some of the communities, because I think this is really where some of the cool details come out. I'm going to share just a couple snapshots of a few communities we worked with. The first here is Williamsburg, Kentucky, Southeast Kentucky. And what is particular here is around the community engagement. The community came together really to preserve what had been a historic site. A historic hotel was located. It since had to be demolished and removed, so it left a grass lot. That lot, the city wanted to turn it into a parking lot to serve downtown. Community members wanted a local park because they didn't have one. So we partnered with them and really started to think about green space preservation, to start to outline the different types of investments and planning that would take. And today, this community has complete ownership and have started to heal some of that town and gown relationship. They've also seen a number of new investments in the downtown just across the street from the River Fog Festival. So on the right-hand side, this is a picture of the festival grounds now from the inaugural festival. These are some of the design elements that we created for them. One of the things that we know, in particular for smaller rural communities, is they just don't have the capacity or financial resources to seek out this type of professional planning support. So we're really lucky to be able to step in and provide some of that when possible. The next community is Manchester, Kentucky, and I had showed the outline of the downtown landscape there earlier. But really, again, this is based on public engagement. Public engagement started. We did a number of really in-depth analysis with this community and community partners to identify catalytic spaces and particular buildings. We did a lot of work around iconography, image preference, as we were thinking about designs to move from ideas into conceptualization. And then ultimately, we're able to activate some spaces. But what you see here on the picture, or in the pictures on the far right, is a series of photographic preferences that we worked with, really showcasing different types of design aesthetic. And we allowed the community really to sort through that and share with us what they felt a connection with. And then this centerpiece that says next time, this is a really short scale, short-term tactical urbanist application that we use called Chalk and Talk, where we'll bring this little chalkboard to community festivals and gather comment and feedback. And it really has been a great way to engage youth and young people to share ideas.
Shane, about 3 minutes, please.
Okay, you got it. So what really came out of this is some really neat design elements and visualizations to activate some of these abandoned spaces in Manchester. I'm gonna sort of wrap up with Whitesburg here. because this one really is a really cool project that does intersect more with the environment in more broad terms than just building preservation and thinking about downtown communities. They really have focused on public engagement as well, but really focused that engagement on a specific corridor that was a rail bed through town, the Tanglewood Trail as it's known now. This project really focused on public health and water quality, public health through getting people on that trail, and water quality through, the community kept dealing with water issues, getting boil water advisories, or having, spills, things like that. So they were really interested in moving some of their economic development plans forward while also thinking about water preservation and water conservation. So some of the things that they've done is they've done a lot of planning and they are executing these plans. This is an example of some of their accessibility around their around their walking trails and sidewalks, really thinking about what would make this a safer community to navigate. But the other thing that they've done in their downtown is they've started to install rain gardens and some other low impact development, really to start a conversation around water quality. Because one of the things that we kept hearing, in particular when we would do chalk and talk at events, and you can see it on this one, is folks really wanted to use their canoe in the river. And they were afraid, either perception or real fears of water quality. So I'm really proud of the folks in Whitesburg who have taken a really broad approach looking at their local water impacts through their downtown ecosystem. And then the other thing that I'm really proud is they had a building right on the North Fork of the Kentucky River that had sat abandoned for since the early 90s. And they have since been able to transform that space into a beautiful open air facility called the Bowling's North Fork Veranda. And this space now accommodates customers who come to the local restaurants downtown, provides them a place to eat outside, open air, that sort of thing. Really is a new treasure in the community that could not have happened without all of those partners coming together and planning their priorities. I want to show just one picture before I wrap up and hide, and this was an example of some youth engagement. The youth came together, really wanted to create something that was generational. They didn't feel like they had a reason to come home. They didn't feel like they had a reason to bring their children or their future children home. And one of the things that they did, and I could talk more about this later, really working with kids directly, hands-on activities. They created this idea, the wow factor that I call it. This is a 20-foot statue of an eagle that will soon be installed in their downtown overlooking their community. And already the young people are already talking about what it's going to be like in 20 years to bring their kids home and show off this piece of intergenerational art that will be in that community in perpetuity. So I went through this really quick. There is so much more to downtown revitalization and the partnerships that make this work, but I appreciate the opportunity to share with you all. And I so apologize for my puppy going crazy over my neighbors working across the street. Thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and stop my share.
Thank you, Shane. No problem with the dog. We've all experienced that over the last year and a half, believe me. And what wonderful projects you presented there, especially Whitesburg. I've heard so much about Whitesburg and the activity that's going on there. It's really great. So now we'll turn to Allison Smith, again, Assistant Director of the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability at Louisville Metro. Allison?
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Let me just get my slides. There we go. Wonderful. Good morning. I'm Allison Smith. I'm with the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability with Louisville Metro Government. And in that role, among other things, I manage the city's brownfields program. Shane did a great job of giving kind of a wide landscape view of brownfields redevelopments in different small towns. I want to tell the story of one brownfield in particular in an urban environment here in Louisville, Kentucky. The site you see on the screen now is the former National Tobacco Company site at 30th and Muhammad Ali in Louisville, in West Louisville. This was the largest vacant brownfield in the city at the time, 24 acres. They had processed tobacco there for many decades, so there was residual contamination, PAHs, some heavy metals. Like most brownfields, though, it wasn't ubiquitous across the site. There were some hot spots. But this property sat vacant for many years, and the city actually took it on, so it was a city-owned property that really had a huge effect on the community after sitting so long. So I want to tell a little story about how this property came to be redeveloped. So as I mentioned, the city owned this property, and they were approached by a nonprofit who wanted to build a food port concept on that site. So if you're not familiar with a food port, the idea is this is a way to support Kentucky farmers. So farmers throughout the state would be able to grow their produce, all their different things they produce. It would come into the food port, it would be processed, packaged, value-added products would be created, and then it would be shipped out to be sold. So it was a way to support the local farm economy, but also focusing on, local agriculture, farm to table, that sort of thing. So it was a really interesting concept. They had an anchor tenant, which was going to be an indoor vertical farm operation, very exciting, about 40,000 square feet of vertical growth. They were working with the Jefferson County Extension Service to have their offices there. Now, one thing that had not been involved for the first couple of years of the planning of this project was community involvement. So to their credit, the nonprofit did establish a council of residents from all 9 of the West Louisville neighborhoods to kind of guide the final design concepts. And this is what they had come up with. It would include community space, outdoor farms, some amenities for the neighborhood as well. The last piece that came in was really interesting. They were working with a company that runs a biodigester, which uses anaerobic digestion, using all the food waste that would be produced at the site to kind of close that loop. So that biodigester would take that food waste, process it into methane, which then could be sold back to LG&E as an energy source. Now, as I mentioned, the community wasn't heavily involved up until that point, and this was the response. So it is not that the community had any fundamental objection to anaerobic digestion. I think we all support closing the waste loop, especially when that can be done in our neighborhood. But the residents didn't see this as a single project. They saw this project in the larger context of West Louisville. And this is that context. So you're probably familiar with EJ Screen. This is just one of many factors that you can look at on EJ Screen. This is proximity to facilities that have a risk management plan. So they are dealing with some sort of hazardous or toxic chemical. And as you can see, that is concentrated in West Louisville around the site of the proposed food port and biodigester. So there was strong opposition to this, not because of the actual biodigester on the site, but because it's part of the cumulative risk that the residents in those neighborhoods see this as a part of. This was not a single project. It was part of the larger landscape of West Louisville. Eventually, the anchor tenant, the vertical farm, did end up pulling out, and unfortunately that project fell through, which left us with, again, a 24-acre vacant site with some residual contamination. Out of the food port project, though, was born the West Louisville Community Council. So those 9 residents from the 9 West Louisville neighborhoods went on to form the West Louisville Community Council. Even though the food port project went away, there was still a 24-acre brownfield that needed to be redeveloped and that they wanted to have a say in. So again, this was a city-owned property, which gave us some leeway on how we were able to address what would happen on this site. So the first thing we did was we partnered with the community council to have some visioning exercises around what people wanted to see on that site. What did they not want to see on that site? It was very well attended, and it was not led by Metro, it was led by the community council. We then took that information, such as this, what they did not want to see, what they wanted to see on the site. As you can see, we got a lot of input, a lot of comment from people on both what they did and didn't want to see on the site. The top 10 ideas that came out of that visioning process included a recreation or sports center, locally owned Black small business, vocational training programs, a whole list of things. It's often easy to say what we don't want to see on a site, but it's a little harder to figure out what we do want to see. So the fact that the community were able to rally around these ideas was really promising. From there, we wanted to help brand the site. We wanted the community to feel some ownership on this site, which at the time was being called the former food port site. And if not that, the National Tobacco Company site. That's not really good branding. So the community council worked with residents to develop a name for the site. They called it Heritage West. We had an art competition where residents were able to submit pieces, drawings, or any type of artistic endeavor that could then be used to brand the site. This was done by Victor Sweat. It was the selected artwork, and the city paid to have it put up on a billboard at the site in order to give the site some identity beyond just a contaminated brownfield. We took all of that, the yeses and the nos of what people wanted to see on the site. We took the branding work that had been done, and the city developed a solicitation of interest to get development proposals for that site. We ended up getting 4 really great, very transformative ideas for projects, from a biotechnology park, indoor track and field, urban agriculture, a local co-op grocery. These were all ideas that were submitted to the city to be reviewed. Part of that process was developers had to present to the community. So we hosted a public meeting where residents could come hear the developers present their ideas. They could ask questions, give feedback, and learn more about the details of those projects. It was incredibly well attended. We had over 150 people just at that meeting, and that's not counting all of the comments we got through email, the online comment forms, and engagement at various activities. Ultimately, the project that was chosen was the Louisville Urban League, their indoor track and field idea. So this project was based around the fact that there is no indoor track and field facility in our region. U of L doesn't have one, JCPS doesn't have one, and as a former track star, the president of the Urban League, CEDIC Reynolds, recognized this as a gap, as something that was missing that could really transform not just West Louisville, but Louisville itself. So this is photos of the announcement and the groundbreaking. Once that project got started, we were able to support it through our Brownfields program. So that included a $350,000 subgrant from our revolving loan fund, which is funded by the EPA, to cover their remediation costs. And that covered pretty much all of those and was able to keep that project moving. As a result of this transformative project and others, the city got a $350,000 assessment grant for the 30th Street corridor where the track is located. We recognize that there will be further development to support the track. It's going to bring in about 30,000 people a year to Louisville for not just for track and field events, but for indoor concerts, other sports activities, just lots of activities that'll be happening there. So we want to make sure that the neighborhood is prepared and has the sites for development that may be needed to support that. So why did we do all this, and what does this have to do with resilience and climate change? So this is a picture of the indoor of the track, and if you ever visit Louisville, I highly recommend you check it out. It's an elevated track. It's state of the art. We've had Olympians who have been there and said they have never seen anything like it. It's one of the best in the world. So there were a few reasons for this. First, as far as environmental sustainability, they ended up planting about 12,000 square feet of native meadows, native plantings, grasses that attract pollinators. They used 10,000 tons of old concrete in the foundations and building posts, so keeping that on site. They installed a white roof on the very large structure of the indoor track that helps combat the urban heat island effect. And they installed an underground system to retain about 8,000 gallons of stormwater during rain events, which helps reduce our overflow events due to our combined sewers. There's also green space and an outdoor track available for community use. So there's lots of ways that it addressed environmental sustainability. But from my perspective, this also helped with human and social resilience. This project created 300 building jobs. Many of those employees were trained by the Urban League's construction trades program. And this project actually had the highest spending with Black-owned firms of any capital project in Kentucky. So they have set the bar very high. Again, there will be indoor and outdoor space available for the community, and there's also other entertainment amenities such as rock climbing and bowling, as well as a convenience store on this site. So this didn't just clean up a brownfield and reduce exposure to contamination, but it created a transformational project that the community rallied around. So now we see positive activity on a site that was blighted, and we believe that this builds not just environmental resilience by combating urban heat island, reducing stormwater overflow, providing native plantings, but really a site that the community can take pride in, that they can be proud of as people come to visit West Louisville. Like I said, there'll be 30,000 visitors a year to this site. And it starts to rebuild the urban fabric of a neighborhood that was decimated by practices like redlining, urban renewal, the federal highway system, predatory lending practices, all of these things that have led us to where we are today. This helps to rebuild what was lost during those processes. So we believe that this project has broad community support, that it will transform this neighborhood along with the other projects that are taking place. And we've already seen lots of positive impacts from it. So this is the view from the track looking downtown. Again, I urge you to go visit it, talk with the Urban League. It has been an amazing project, just an amazing project to be even a small part of. So we've seen huge response from the community. Nationwide, they've gotten lots of recognition for this project. And I believe this is an excellent example of how brownfields redevelopment not only supports resilience to climate change and environmental efforts, but also supports human resilience. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Wonderful things going on in Louisville. Obviously our biggest city and metropolitan area, and a lot of opportunities for projects there. So now we'll turn to Sabrina Sims again with Fema to talk about some resiliency projects and hazard mitigation. Take it away, Sabrina.
Good morning. Are you all able to see my slides at this time?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So again, we're talking about building better communities. And this morning, I'm going to talk to you about FEMA's hazard mitigation grant programs. The newest of which we're all familiar with would be the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. So for the fiscal year 21 cycle, the HMA or hazard mitigation assistance notification is for the FMA program, as well as the BRIC program, opened on September 30th. And it will close on January 20th for the two programs. These are competitive annual grant mitigation programs, and they provide states, local communities and tribes, as well as territories, funding for eligible mitigation activities to strengthen our nation's ability to both build the culture of preparedness by reducing disaster losses, as well as protecting life and property from future damage, for disaster damage, that is. So this year, there is $1.1 billion available for both of these two programs combined. There's $1 billion for BRIC and then $160 million for FMA. As you can see from the images here, the amounts of funding that are available, and then we'll get into more detail about that a little bit later on in this presentation. This slide showcases who's eligible to apply for both of the programs. We'll talk about, in terms of who's not eligible, private nonprofits, NGOs, businesses, and private citizens. However, the important thing to note here is that they can partner with eligible sub-applicants to get mitigation benefits, similar to what Allison just spoke on those various awesome projects that they're working on within her camp. So with BRIC, per the Disaster Reform Act of 2018, FEMA must apply a 7-year requirement for each grant cycle for BRIC. So as of January 1st, 2021, all states, including the District of Columbia, as well as federally recognized tribes and territories, all satisfy this requirement. And this requirement is for mitigation projects and capability and capacity building activities, with the exception of mitigation planning. So for states and territories, again, they must have received a major disaster declaration under the Stafford Act 7 years prior to the annual grant application period start date. And then federally recognized tribes must have received a major disaster dec under the Stafford Act as well within those 7 years, either by the entirety or partially located in a state that received a major disaster debt in the 7 years prior. A federally recognized tribe is also eligible to apply for either a grant as an applicant or a sub-applicant. If a tribe requests to pay to apply through the state, then the state, again, must meet that 7-year disaster criteria. So here we're showing the sampling of requirements. In addition to what's shown here in terms of, again, having that disaster deck that I just spoke about, the applicant must have a FEMA approved hazard mitigation plan by the deadline and at the time of project funding. Communities are really encouraged but not required to pursue plan integration, which is a process where communities look critically at their existing plan framework and align their efforts. So integration of hazard mitigation principles into other local planning mechanisms such as comprehensive plans, transportation plans, flood ordinances, and things of that sort is very, very vital to build a safer, more resilient community. So this is a two-way exchange of information, which supports that community-wide reduction for disasters that occur both before and after. Not only will the community's planning efforts be better integrated, but by going through this process, there's a higher level of interagency coordination, which is just as important as the planning mechanisms themselves. There's a cost share requirement for all sub-applications that are funded through these programs. The non-federal cost share may consist of cash or donated a third party for like in-kind services, materials, or any combination thereof. FEMA will provide 100% federal funding for management costs. The cost share for BRIC is, for this program, is 75% federal and then 25% non-federal. For economically disadvantaged rural communities, they're also eligible for an increase in cost share up to 90% federal and then 10% non-federal. And those economically disadvantaged communities will be a community with of 3,000 or fewer individuals identified by the applicant that is considered to be economically disadvantaged, with residents having an average per capita income, annual income not exceeding 80% of the national per capita income based on available data. So for FMA, funding is also available up to 75% for eligible costs. However, FEMA may contribute the federal cost share for properties that are insured under the National Flood Insurance Program at the time of application to meet certain definitions. So that's the severe repetitive loss up to 100% or repetitive loss, excuse me, up to 90%. So in the definition of a severe repetitive loss property will be at least 2 separate NFIP claims have to have been made within with the cumulative amount for such claims exceeding the market value for the insured structure. And then for repetitive loss, property must have incurred flood damage on 2 occasions, in which the cost of the repair on average equaled or exceeded 25% of the market value of the structure at the time of the flood event. Here I want to talk about Justice 40 initiative. This Justice 40 promotes equity by helping members of disadvantaged community groups and prioritizes 40% of the benefits to disadvantaged communities in reference to Executive Order 14008, which is in line with the administration's Justice 40 initiative. In what we're, disadvantaged communities are defined as a community that may be characterized by several variables, including but not limited to low income, high and or persistent poverty, high unemployment and underemployment, as well as racial and ethnic segregation, linguistic isolation, high housing cost burden, and substandard housing. Amongst that, also distressed neighborhoods. The list goes on. Limited water and sanitation access and affordability, disappropriate environmental burdens and high cumulative impacts, high energy cost burdens, low energy costs. So for BRIC, this is occurring through our national competition, as well as the economically disadvantaged rural communities, tribal set-aside. We offer direct technical assistance, which involves no funding, but it involves partnerships of Fema, both regionally and our headquarters partners. And then we partner with our state hazard mitigation officers as well to provide assistance for states and tribes to begin to build their plan. There are new eligibility requirements for BRIC and FMA. Some of them are listed here. I mentioned Executive Order 14008, but also there's a change with regard to Executive Order 14030, which is climate related and financial risk. And it reinstates Executive Order 13690, which established the Federal Flood Risk Management Standards, or the FERMS. FEMA is partially implementing the FERMS as well. So currently, FEMA utilizes the American Society of Civil Engineer Standards, the latest edition of that, to establish minimal design and construction requirements for structural elevation, dry flood proofing, mitigation, and reconstruction as well. But now the FERM will primarily be used to determine the minimal flood protection and elevation for certain project types. I'll get into a bit of the requirements and funding for our flood mitigation assistance program. And so the purpose of the program is shown here is to reduce or eliminate risk of repetitive flooding damage, as well to buildings insured by the National Flood Insurance Program. And those eligibility requirements for states, the District of Columbia, and territories, U.S. territories and Indian tribal governments that are federally recognized. Each of those should designate one agency to serve as the applicant for FMA funding. And then each applicant's designated agency may only submit one FMA application to FEMA. For sub-applicants, that includes our local governments, including cities, townships, counties, special district governments, and Indian tribal governments, including those federally recognized tribes. They're considered sub-applicants and must submit their applications directly through the state, territory, or tribal applicant agency. So with NFIP, the National Flood Insurance requirements, I mentioned that again, with mitigated structures, these are identified. It must have an NFIP policy in effect at the time of the FMA application start date and must maintain it for the life of the structure, regardless of the flood zone. And then for those mitigation structures that are acquired or demolished, the start date for NFIP policy must be maintained until it transfers, until the transfer of property occurs, regardless of the flood zone. And all structures included in the project sub-application must be insured, again, before, during, and after. Here's a list of several eligible activities that can be funded under FMA. Those mitigation from projects include everything from elevation to acquisition, demo, relocation, dry flood proofing, soil stabilization, and more. In addition to those mitigation projects that are shown, hazard mitigation planning, technical assistance, as well as management costs are also eligible activities. Here, we're showcasing the funding priorities for FMA. So as I mentioned earlier, there's $160 million available for FMA funding. And this slide shows how it's allocated. There are 5 priorities: project scoping, community flood mitigation projects, technical assistance, flood mitigation planning, and then individual flood mitigation projects. So there are several changes that I want to point out with regard to the funding for FMA for 2021. So one of those is under project scoping. FEMA has increased the total funding available for project scoping priorities from $4 million to now $10 million. The project scoping cap was split into 2 separate cap areas for community flood mitigation projects, and then those individual flood mitigation projects. So up to $900,000 per sub-applicant will be available to scope community flood mitigation projects, and then up to $300,000 per sub-applicant for individual flood mitigation projects. And some of the prioritization factors include those that's been incorporated within the Center for Disease Control's Social Vulnerability Index, and final priority scoring criteria for both project scoping and those flood mitigation projects and individual property mitigation. As I mentioned, there are several funding caps that were changed. So far, there's $300,000 per project scoping sub-app for individuals, $900,000 for community flood mitigation projects. There's a $30 million cap for community flood mitigation project sub-applications, and then $50,000 per applicant for all technical assistance sub-applications for FEMA, to which FEMA obligated in 2020 for FMA awards. There was at least $1 million in federal share, and of that, $100,000 was per flood applicant for flood hazard mitigation planning, with maximums of $50,000 for the state hazard mitigation planning, and then $25,000 for local hazard mitigation planning. 10% of the total application budget for applicant management costs for applicants that to administer and then manage their award and sub-award activities. And then 5% for the total mitigation project, which included project scoping and then planning application budgets. So we get to BRIC, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. This is an annual competitive hazard mitigation program that provides support to states, local communities, tribes, and territories as they undertake hazard mitigation projects, reducing the risk they face from disaster and national hazards. So right now we're in the midst of the first inaugural award cycle of the new BRIC program. We're still reviewing applications and getting them ready for award for those that were selected for further review. This program replaces the legacy PDM program, or pre-disaster mitigation program. One of the major differences that the PDM is that the PDM funding was determined by each year by Congress through appropriations to the National this pre-disaster mitigation fund, versus with BRIC. BRIC will be funded by a set aside from the disaster relief funds. And as I mentioned, all states and territories must have a hazard mitigation deck under the Stafford Act in 7 years. And at this point, we all have. Every state, tribe, and territory is eligible for BRIC at this point. I want to showcase here BRIC guiding principles. So there are 6 here, and Allison and Shane spoke about several different projects that support community and capability and capacity building. They promoted partnerships and allow for enabling large infrastructure projects. So through the development of the BRIC program, with these 6 guiding principles, going through our guiding principles, you'll see that the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Community programs, it means to FEMA that we want to continue to commit to communities to consider changes to their infrastructure and reduce damages caused by all hazards, including those that Kentucky is faced with, from the flooding to the fire to the wind, winter weather, extreme cold, the whole gamut. And so when communities do work more so as in a whole community approach, they can encourage and enable more innovative ways to do it. And we just want to remind you guys that not all projects have to be highly complex or even expensive. Some of the BRIC priorities here, they said the BRIC program sets really clear priorities. And basically with BRIC, we'll select projects that align with our program priorities, as well as touch our lifelines, which I'll touch on in just a second. Touch our lifelines, those infrastructure projects, building code projects, and And our priorities also touch on shared responsibility and partnerships. And again, the innovative piece. We want to increase flexibility. Again, we're reducing the number of limitations or caps. We're increasing the number of applications and funds per state, as well as the state allocations. And then we're streamlining processes. Part of the streamlining processes factor, we've incorporated a new system called Fema Go, where applicants can go and apply as well as track their grants throughout, as well as our internal Fema folks use that as a means of the official grant file.
Sabrina, we're running tight on time.
Okay, get in there. I want to point out real quick these the community lifelines. Among the priorities listed on the guiding principle slide that I mentioned, community lifelines are with BRIC a unique opportunity for us to apply the concept of hazard mitigation practices. So these demonstrate how one project activity can have community-wide disaster resilient benefits as well as mitigate risk across multiple lifelines. I'm going to show you guys some resources that you can go to once I'm done that include the hazard mitigation action planner, and I'm just going to go through really quick because we're running short on time. This right here is the process that it takes to go through, right, in order to get a project going. And again, talking about improving risk, it's for BRIC eligible project that is effective in reducing risk, it requires a thorough and thoughtful development process. And this slide here just showcases that process all the way through from the planning process through implementation. We talked about capability and capacity building activities. Again, just pointing out 4 that will be touched on from all the presenters here. Partnerships and project scoping and planning are the ones that I really want to point out here. With BRIC funding, again, we talked about the amount that's available. I want you to know that there's different ways that we review these projects. We review them on a qualitative manner as well as technical. And it goes to a review panel from national reviewers through internal reviewers for FEMA before projects are actually awarded and approved. Really quick, I want to spotlight a couple of projects that you'll be able to find within that mitigation action planner. Here is a way that funding was used for microgrids, and it highlights some of the partnerships that have come together to offset and promote equity. This one right here was a Blue Lake Rancheria microgrid project, and with this project, they had the ability to disconnect and operate independently using microgrid systems to mitigate disturbances caused by natural disasters and allow for faster system recovery and response. There's another one here in this example with Nebraska and Kansas in an electrical system and ice and windstorm mitigation projects. In this example, regional partnerships protect the power transmission. This is a multi-jurisdictional approach to mitigation, which allowed Nebraska and Kansas to cooperatively protect critical energy transmission facilities to ensure uninterrupted power flow during heavy winter storms. We've got several program materials that I want to share with you guys, and I'm happy to share the slides to be shared out once we're done here. We've got BRIC program support materials. BRIC website has a ton of information. On the right-hand side, there's a list of BRIC resources, which are a one-stop shop, very quick reads. It has links to all types of other information, including how we review grants with the technical and qualitative criteria, as well as project scoping, ideas, and activities. The mitigation action portfolio, which I just mentioned, but more importantly, if you guys missed any of the FEMA headquarters webinar presentations that were presented over the summertime, there are on-demand videos and presentations that are available with this link at the bottom on the right-hand side, where you can see the recordings live, as you'll be able to see this recording as well as get the copies of the presentations that were given. And then here I want to point out resources. FEMA hopes that the examples in the project, in the mitigation action portfolio, will inspire you guys to think big and bold in addressing these standards while considering additional benefits that could be achieved beyond reducing economic and human loss from disasters. And that will wrap it up, so I can turn it over to the next presenter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sabrina, and thanks, Nika, and for all your all's work and helping our communities. FEMA is obviously a very important organization. So we're going to wrap it up with Kimberly McCay and Scott Maas of USDA. Take it away, folks.
All right, if you could go up to that top left-hand corner and click display settings. Yep, first option. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today to be able to speak and represent rural development. My name's Scott Maas. I'm the Business Cooperative Programs Program Director and also the Energy Coordinator. I'm joined today by Kimberly McCay, which is the Field Director for the Community Facilities Field Program and also the Acting WEP Program. Just an quick overview. I want to give a few minutes for questions and answers. Rural development main objective here is for job development, and we're here to promote jobs and create jobs either through new development or through saving of current positions. You get it to transfer. We have a variety of different programs when it comes to for-profit and nonprofits. What I want to talk to today about is two programs that are tied directly to for-profit entities, and it's very unique. Typically, majority of our programs are tied to nonprofits, but these are two programs that are tied directly to a for-profit entity. The first is the Business and Industry Guarantee Loan Program. This is a program that will assist with any type of development, either for new development, new jobs, new creation, or if you're looking to expand, to refinance, do a variety of different things. But this is a job, excuse me, I'll slow down a little bit. This is a loan program that works with your local commercial lender to help support any new growth. And what we can do is basically provide assistance to the lender by providing a guarantee, and we'll guarantee up to 80% of a loan. To be eligible for the program, it has to be located in a rural area. That's a population of 50,000 or less, and it has to be for a for-profit entity. There are some fees involved. You can see there's 3% fee and also a annual renewal fee of 50 basis points. But we can go up to a $25 million project, and we have a lending authority at the state level of 10 million. Again, and this slide just shows again what we can do up to 80% for 25 million. Where we really help the lender is we allow the lender to go outside their norm when it comes to their financial covenants. So when it comes to terms of the loan, we can go into real estate, we can go into 30 years. For machinery and equipment, we can go into 15 years. And for working capital, we can go into 7 years. We do not do any type of revolving loan credits. It's strictly working capital. And there are, again, another covenant that the bank can overcome with the guarantee program is that we only require a minimum of 10% equity position at closing for an existing business and 20% for a startup. So that gives the lender some flexibility regarding capital injection, capital investment of the business, or equity that's currently existing with the business. In 2021, we obligated over 111 million in this program in Kentucky. So we very active with this program. This program is really wide open. It can be for a variety of different things, but again, it's available year round. Funding typically is available for the full fiscal year, and we would love to look at any opportunity that might exist with an existing business out there. Here's some examples of what we've done. We assisted living, hotels, manufacturing facilities, construction companies, battery manufacturers, and also hospitals, a variety of different opportunities, office complexes, buildings, et cetera, that we've done over the years. The second program I want to talk about is the Rural Energy for America program. This is the REAP program. It's a grant and guaranteed loan program that assists ag producers and rural small businesses with any type of energy efficiency or renewable energy project. So this could be a variety of different things. Again, it has to be, the business has to be located in a population of 50,000 or less. They have to be either an ag producer, which means that at least 50% of their gross income is coming from the farm, or a rural small business, and that's defined by the SBA side standards for small businesses. Again, to be eligible, again, it's for renewable energy or energy efficiency, and it's basically, it has to be technology that's currently available and feasible. It cannot be for research and development technology. It needs to be for actual existing technology and commercially available. For guaranteed loans, we can go up to 75% of the total eligible project costs within the loan. Again, we can go up to a $25 million loan, and we can combine that with a B&I program. So if you have a large-scale anaerobic digester or a large-scale solar farm, et cetera, there's an opportunity to go up to a $50 million project within our two programs combined. We also have a grant program, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but you can work with the guaranteed loan program, and where basically the grants for 25% of the project, loan is 50%, and again, 25% is invested by the applicant. Again, we can guarantee the loan up to 80%, up to $25 million. And terms are very similar to the B&I program, which we saw earlier. Loan fees are substantially less, 1% for origination and 25 basis points for annual renewal fee. So there is an advantage if there's an energy component to a project to look at the REAP guaranteed loan program. On the grant side, basically, the applicants are eligible up to 25% of the cost. Here you can see the minimum requirements for renewable energy and energy efficiency. We basically have in Kentucky roughly about $1 million worth of allocated funds per year, and funding is based on a competitive scoring. So it is a competitive program, and typically we'll fund anywhere from 85 to 100% of our applications. Some examples. Solar is very active right now, very popular with the program. We also do in bio-based furnace systems, any type of geothermal, any type of renewable would be eligible. On the energy efficiency side, basically, if we can do an energy audit that shows with the new technology it's energy savings, it's eligible under the program. So a variety of different agricultural projects, and also with business, either lighting, heating, cooler systems, et cetera. So there's a variety of different opportunities. Here's a slide just showing some websites, information that you can find accordingly, and also my contact information. And now I'll hand this over to Kimberly, and she can talk a little bit about the WP program.
Okay, hello everyone. I'll be very brief. I was just kind of here to fill in a few gaps. So where Scott can do more business aspects, the community facilities and water environmental programs, which is housed under our community programs, is just what it says. It's for the community. We can help you if you're a municipality or a nonprofit. So under our water and environmental program, that is going to be your water and your wastewater type projects or your stormwater projects. And then under the community facility side, that could be your city halls. Usually it can be fire stations, police stations, anything that can help the community. And so I just wanted to present these slides so you can find out more about it in case you're unfamiliar with what we can do for a community. Our population is a little bit different than Scott's. Our water environmental program is up to 10,000, but then we do have the guaranteed program in water and environmental that can go up to 50,000 population. And same with the community facilities, it goes up to 20,000 population, but again, the guaranteed will go up to 50,000 population as well. So we've been able with this new with the changes in the guaranteed program, help communities that may have been ineligible before. So just keep us in mind, just briefly touch. I know when we had some floodings earlier in the spring, we got contacted a lot about our emergency community water assistance grant. And we was asking about generators. And unfortunately, we cannot do generators under that program. But if you have a water or wastewater project that you're working on, and then you can do a permanent generator. So be thinking ahead, possibly about some disasters, if you could use a permanent generator in the plant and build that into your project. And saying if it was a hospital, if you're doing a hospital project or something else, there are ways that you can build it into an existing or upcoming project that may be to plan ahead. And that's really all I wanted to say. So we'll leave this for a couple minutes of questions.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Scott. If all the attendees or all the panelists can turn on your cameras, we do have just a few minutes for some questions.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Lyons. I think the first question that we have today is going to be for Shane and Allison. How can state-level environmental programs effectively work with you and community partners to help with projects?
That's a good question. Go ahead, Allison.
I was just going to say that the state has been a tremendous partner. We've taken advantage of the Cleaner Commonwealth grant to do some work at 2 brownfield sites. The technical assistance that the state provides is top-notch. So any questions that I have, particularly about the history of a site, so there are people in the state who have been there for a long time who know these sites way better than I do. So I think the technical experience, the additional funding options, and also the support for writing grants for federal brownfields grants, they provide a lot of support, and I'm very appreciative of it. It makes my job a lot easier.
And I'll echo that, and I'll say that the Kentucky Brownfields program has been incredibly helpful with communities that I've worked with as they're navigating brownfield sites. And then another organization that hasn't really came up is the Kentucky Main Street program within the Heritage, right? So looking at historic preservation and those sorts of things have also been really critical. I think one of the big pieces of support that communities always are looking for is those technical skills that Allison alluded to, sort of navigating that grant world. For some folks, it's really easy. For other folks, it is an unobtainable obstacle that looks like a hill too large to climb. So I think just understanding all communities sort of come and approach this with different levels of capacity to actually execute it, giving them grace and that extra hand-holding when needed can really go a mile.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is for the FEMA team. How can communities work with their electric utilities on power outage mitigation projects?
For communities, it's best to reach out to start, I would say, with your state hazard mitigation officer. Your state hazard mitigation officer's information can be found on the FEMA.gov website. Oftentimes, the state hazard mitigation officer has tentacles, so to speak, connected to the entire community, both with state agencies as well as locals. And oftentimes, you guys are looking at some of the same projects or projects that are intertwined somehow. So that would be the first person or point of contact that I would reach out to see what either programs that are projects that are in the works, as well as various resources that are available at the state level, and those connected partners as well to get those projects going, those discussions going as well.
Great, thank you. And then just one last one. I know we're running short on time. Are high hazard dams in poor condition eligible for these grant programs that you guys offer?
High hazard dams, we have several different programs that could intersect. We do have a national dam safety program under FEMA as well. That is a non-disaster program within the mitigation division. So the National Dam Safety Program is one option, as well as if it is a dam project that, again, crosses over multiple lifelines or involves various partnerships, then it could be a combination thereof where either the BRIC program, for example, could be used in combination with other partners that will be involved in the project as such. And then we will work, of course, with our EHP partners and our technical team as well to identify other options in terms of funding for high hazard dam projects. Got an awesome technical team that can help with that.
Well, Deputy Secretary Lyons, I know we're running short on time, so we'll make sure and send out any other questions to the panelists after the conference. That's all we have for now.
Thank you, Carrie. And I want to thank you, the panelists, for participating with us this morning. Great information, a lot of great programs to help our communities, and I really appreciate all your all's work on that front. So with that, we'll turn it over to the next set of presenters. Thank you.